The barn stank of old hay, whiskey, and something darker, something that clung to the back of the throat like rot. A single oil lamp swung from a beam above, its flame trembling in the cold draft that slipped through the warped boards. The crowd pressed closer, boots grinding dirt, faces half-shadowed, eyes gleaming with cruel excitement. The sound that tore through that space was not human, not really. It was pain turned into sound, high and broken, and every time it came, the men roared like animals. Jace Hale stood near the doorway, silent, hat pulled low. He had ridden 40 miles that day, looking for a place to water his horse and rest. What he found instead was this pit of men pretending to be gods. He leaned against the frame, watching, jaw tight as he tried to understand what he was seeing. Inside a steel cage meant for fighting dogs, a woman knelt on the dirt, naked from the waist down, her body bent and trembling. Her belly heaved with the rhythm of birth. "Come on, 12, someone shouted, laughter spilling after the words. "Push, girl, or you'll cost me $5. Coins clattered as bets were placed, bills passed from one calloused hand to another. They stood in a semicircle around her, cheering each contraction like it was part of a show. Jace had seen saloons filled with cruelty before, but this was a sickness deeper than he'd imagined. The woman's hair clung to her neck in dark tangles, her hands gripping the bars so tightly her knuckles bled. Every movement brought a new round of mockery. "She's slowing down," one man jeered. "Told you she ain't got it in her. Should have drowned her after the last one." The man collecting the bets laughed, a thick-necked brute in a stained vest, a cigar burning between his yellow teeth. "Easy, boys. The house always wins. Dead or alive, she's worth the price of admission." Jace's stomach turned. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "What's this?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise. The brute turned, grin wide. "You new here, cowboy?" Jace didn't answer. His gaze flicked toward the cage again. The woman's face lifted just long enough for him to see her eyes, gray, wild, and wet with terror. She looked no older than 20, but her body carried scars older than most men in the room. The brute chuckled. "Don't look so shocked. She's one of the breeders. Property. You ever see good stock? Strong hips, good lungs, quiet most days. This one's 12. 12. Jace repeated, the word sour in his mouth. "Number 12, the man said proudly. "We don't bother with names. Names make 'em think they're people." The crowd laughed. Jace didn't. His eyes drifted to the corner of the cage where a small wooden board leaned against the bars. On it, carved crudely, were lines, like tally marks. 12 of them. One for every time she'd been forced to bear a child, maybe. Or every time she'd survived what they called entertainment. He felt something cold move through him, slower than rage but sharper. "You're betting on her dying." The brute shrugged. "Or the baby. Either way, someone wins. She's too weak for another one, though. I'd put your money on her going first." Someone laughed from the back. "If the brat lives, I'll buy it. Strong bloodline. Train it up." The laughter that followed echoed against the walls. Jace didn't move, but inside, something was breaking apart. Another scream tore from the cage. She fell forward, hands sinking into the dirt, face pressed against the ground. "Please," she whispered, though no one seemed to hear her. Her body shook violently. "Please." Jace stepped closer, his boots crunching over the straw. The crowd's attention shifted toward him now, curious, maybe amused. "What are you doing, cowboy?" One called out. "You think you're gonna save her? She's nothing but a birthing mule." He ignored them. He crouched near the bars, close enough to see the sweat dripping from her temple, the tremor in her lips. "Hey," he said softly. "Can you hear me?" Her head lifted. Her eyes met his. For a second, the world around them, the noise, the stench, the laughter, fell away. All that existed was that look. Desperate. Human. Alive. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked. She blinked, confused. "No, name. What did they call you?" 12, she breathed. Jace's hand clenched. "Not anymore." He rose slowly. The brute frowned. "You'd best back off, friend. You're spooking the boys." Jace looked at him, cold, steady. "You're the one spooking me." The brute's grin faded. "Watch your tongue." The crowd tensed, the kind of hush that falls before violence. Then came another scream, louder this time, raw enough to rip through bone. The woman was pushing, her whole body convulsing. Blood darkened the dirt beneath her. "Here we go," someone yelled. She's doing it. The brute turned toward the cage again, clapping his hands. Push, 12. Come on now, earn your feed. And that's when Jace moved. His revolver came up faster than the brute could flinch. The gunshot exploded like thunder inside the barn. The man stumbled back, eyes wide, red blooming across his chest before he hit the ground. The crowd scattered instantly, some diving for cover, others frozen in shock. Next man who speaks, Jace said evenly, smoke still curling from his barrel, joins him. Silence fell like a blanket. Jace strode forward, kicked the cage door open with his boot. The metal screeched as it swung wide. The woman stared at him, trembling, too weak to move. He dropped his coat, spreading it across the dirt. Come on, he murmured, kneeling beside her. We'll do this together. She shook her head faintly, tears spilling down her cheeks. They'll kill you. Let him try. He brushed the hair from her face with surprising gentleness. You're not dying here. Another contraction hit, and she cried out, grabbing his wrist. He steadied her, talking softly as the moments dragged on, each one heavier than the last. The air reeked of sweat and iron, but he didn't flinch. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, until finally, the air split with a new sound. A baby's cry. Thin, defiant, alive. Jace looked down at the tiny child slick with blood and trembling, and something broke inside him, something hard he'd carried for years. He wrapped the newborn in his coat, holding it close. The woman collapsed back, sobbing. She lived, he said quietly, almost to himself. Then, louder, to the silent men watching, you all just lost your bet. No one answered. Not a soul moved. He lifted the baby into the woman's arms, then helped her up, one arm around her shoulders. She was shaking but alive. We're leaving, he said to the crowd. Anyone who wants to stop us, come forward. No one did. He guided her toward the barn door, boots slow and sure on the dirt. The cold night waited beyond, vast and clean. As they stepped out, the wind hit their faces like freedom itself. Behind them, the barn fell silent, the firelight flickering against the empty cage, the place where a number used to kneel and a woman was born again. Snow fell in thick, quiet flakes outside the cabin, muffling the world until all that remained was the sound of crackling wood and the soft, rhythmic breathing of a woman and her child. The fire cast a gentle amber light across the room, making the shadows dance along the log walls. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the woman wasn't hearing men's laughter or the rattle of chains. Only silence, and a heartbeat that wasn't fear. She lay on a rough cot made of pine, wrapped in wool blankets Jace had scavenged from his saddlebag. Her body ached with every breath, but she didn't complain. Her mind hadn't yet accepted this new world she'd woken into, a world without bars. She kept expecting the clang of a lock, the stomp of boots, the bark of a voice calling her, 12. But when she opened her eyes, all she saw was the man who had shattered that nightmare. Jace sat by the fire, polishing his revolver with slow, deliberate movements. He wasn't a talkative man, his words seemed to cost him something, but his presence filled the room like a promise. The kind of promise she'd never known, that no harm would reach her while he drew breath. She turned her head toward the cradle he'd carved from a whiskey crate. The baby lay there, swaddled in his coat, sleeping soundly. Her chest tightened at the sight, part love, part disbelief. The child was alive. Against every cruel bet, every jeer, every prayer that went unanswered before, this one had been heard. Jace noticed her looking and spoke without turning his head. She's strong, he said softly. You both are. Her lips trembled. I don't feel strong. You don't have to. Strength ain't about feeling it. It's about what you do when there's no choice left. His words lingered. She watched the flames lick the iron pot hanging over the fire and tried to remember what it was like to be someone, not a thing. She remembered flashes, a field, sunlight, her father's voice teaching her how to carve a flower out of bark. But everything after that was a blur of cages, darkness, and numbers. She reached up, touching the faint scar where, 12, had been branded into her wrist. They'll come for me, she said quietly. The men from the barn. They'll want their property back. Jace stopped polishing. He looked at her, steady and unflinching. Ain't nobody owns you now. Not while I'm alive. She studied him for a long moment. He wasn't young, not anymore. The lines around his eyes spoke of battles, maybe regrets, but there was something clean in his gaze, something that made her believe him, even against reason. Why did you save me? she asked finally. You didn't even know my name. He leaned back in the chair, eyes flicking to the window where snow gathered on the sill. Maybe that's the point, he said. Maybe I was tired of walking past things that needed saving. She smiled faintly, the first real smile she'd given in years. It felt strange, almost painful. You risked your life for someone who wasn't even a person. Jace frowned. Don't say that again. She looked away. It's true. He stood then, walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps. When he reached her side, he crouched down so their eyes met. You listen to me, he said softly, but his tone carried steel beneath it. You are a person. You got a soul, a will, a name. He stopped himself. Or you will. She blinked, confused. A name. He nodded. You deserve one. She stared at him as if he were speaking a foreign tongue. The concept of choosing a name, of having one at all, felt impossible. I wouldn't know where to start. He shrugged. Then we'll start simple. Something that means you're not who they said you were. Her fingers traced the edge of the blanket. Before they took me, my mother called me. She paused, brows furrowing as she tried to summon the memory. Mara, she said finally, almost to herself. She said it meant sorrow. Jace's eyes softened. Then let's keep it. But let's change what it means. She tilted her head. Change it. Yeah, he said, his voice low, steady. Let it mean strength that came from sorrow. Something they couldn't break. She exhaled shakily, and tears filled her eyes again, but this time they weren't only from pain. Mara, she repeated, testing it. Claiming it. I haven't heard that name in years. He smiled, a rare, quiet thing that reached his eyes. Well, now it's yours again. They sat in silence for a while, both staring at the fire. The logs cracked, sending sparks upward. The baby stirred in her sleep, making a soft sound that melted the air. Mara turned toward the cradle, her heart swelling. She needs a name too, she said. Jace nodded. You pick it. Her hand reached for the cradle, resting lightly on the baby's chest. The tiny heartbeat thudded steady beneath her palm. Hope, she whispered. Because she came from a place where there shouldn't have been any. Jace leaned against the wall, nodding. Hope, he repeated. Fits her. Outside, the wind howled against the roof, and the fire's light flickered. Jace stood, adding another log to the flames. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who'd learned to live with ghosts but wasn't afraid of them anymore. You should rest, he said. I can't, Mara murmured. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The faces. The cage. He hesitated. I know that kind of sleep. Took me years to get rid of it. She looked at him. What did you see? He was silent for a long while. War, he said finally. Men doing things they couldn't take back. Me included. He turned his gaze to the window, where the snow drifted down in endless white. I guess I've been trying to balance the scales ever since. She studied him, this stranger who had risked everything for her. He didn't look like a savior. He looked tired, weathered, but there was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet, unwavering decency, that made her believe the world might still have good men left. Thank you, she whispered. He shook his head. Don't thank me. Just live. Mara lay back, the exhaustion of the past days finally catching up to her. The warmth of the fire, the steady rhythm of the wind outside, and the soft sound of Hope breathing, it all pulled her toward sleep. But before she drifted off, she felt Jace's hand gently adjust the blanket over her shoulder. Get some rest, he said quietly. You're safe here. When she woke again, dawn had painted the cabin in pale gold. The fire had burned low, and Jace was already outside, splitting wood. She watched him through the frosted windowpane, his movements steady, unhurried. For the first time, she realized she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Mara reached over and lifted Hope into her arms, pressing a kiss to her tiny forehead. You're free now, she whispered. We both are. The wind carried the scent of pine through a crack in the wall. Jace's voice came faintly from outside, low and rough as he called to his horse. And for the first time in her life, Mara felt something she didn't have a name for yet, a quiet peace, fragile but real. She closed her eyes, rocking the baby gently, and listened to the rhythm of a new life beginning, one heartbeat, two breaths, and a promise that neither would ever be a number again.